Chapter 21 Echoing Footsteps 8 years later, 1789. The chapter begins with a description of England and what is going on at this time. Lucy and Charles are happily married and now are the parents of 2 children. They have a daughter also named Lucy and a son who died in his early years. Lucy weaves her golden thread tightly through her family and often listens to the echoing footsteps coming from the streets. Sidney Carton is part of the family, considering Lucy, her daughter, calls him her Uncle Carton. Carton has moved on and has married a widow with 2 sons. England represents the calm and happy life in Soho. In France, the Third State has finally turned at bay and are ready to fight. Monsieur and Madame Defarge have led the mob which Dickens compares to a whirlpool of boiling waters and a raging sea, which is mindless, heartless, and inescapable. The people arm themselves with every weapon imaginable, which demonstrates how the revolutionaries are more about revenge than enlightenment deals. The Defarges lead the people to the Bastille where Dr. Manette was once held. The people demand for the prisoners and for the governor of the Bastille. Monsieur Defarge then demands that an officer shows him 105 North Tower. There they find Dr. Manette's initials carved into the wall. After 7 prisoners are freed, 7 guards are killed and their heads are put on spikes. This shows the change of power between the revolutionaries and the nobles. The governor of the Bastille is then thrown into the crowd and brutally murdered. Madame Defarge then takes her long knife and cuts his head straight off. This foreshadows the guillotine. This also shows how Madame Defarge is so bloodthirsty that even though the governor was dead, she needed to cut his head off for revenge. In this chapter, there are multiple themes, such as fate, revolution, sacrifice, and resurrection. In this chapter, we see the theme of sacrifice in England when Mr. Lorry enters the Manette Darnay home, stressed and anxious from a long day at Tellson's Bank. Mr. Lorry tells them how the Paris office of Tellson's Bank has been flooded with aristocrats trying to save their property. Charles sacrificed his property to escape his family's past and to do it for Lucy. Aristocrats who hung on to their wealth will now have lost it. The theme of revolution appears strongly when the Defarges lead the mob to obtain revenge, blood, and justice. The theme of resurrection and recall to life appears when the 7 prisoners are freed from prison, just like Dr. Manette once was from the Bastille. The most important theme of this chapter is fate. Fate is demonstrated by the echoing footsteps heard by many, which symbolize the revolution. More importantly, Dr. Manette is the shoemaker, and when he typically makes shoes is when he is trying to escape fate. There are also 2 motifs present in this chapter. The first one is imprisonment, and the second one is the change of power between the revolutionaries and the nobles. The prison symbolizes the unjust usage of power by the First State and how locking people away doesn't lock away their secrets. Charles Dickens did not free 7 prisoners and kill 7 guards by coincidence. This demonstrates the change of power between the revolutionaries and the nobles. In this chapter, there are 3 literary devices. There is foreshadowing, juxtaposition, and allusion. The definition of foreshadowing is an event in the story which gives a hint as to the main plot. In this chapter, the guillotine is foreshadowed when Madame Defarge cuts off an already dead man's head. The next literary device is juxtaposition. The definition of it is putting 2 contrasting ideas together to highlight their comparisons. The juxtaposition found in this chapter is the comparison between England in tranquility and France in turbulence. The final literary device found in this chapter is an allusion, which is a reference to a person, event, or piece of literature that exists outside of the text.
The allusion found in this chapter is the reference Dickens makes from the attack on the Bastille to the real attack, which began the French Revolution. It was one of the defining moments for the French, and its anniversary is still celebrated as the French Independence Day.
Throughout the second part of the novel, the characters further develop, allowing them to alter or aid the plot. For example, Madame Defarge becomes more bloodthirsty as she chops off the governor's head even when he's already dead. Monsieur Defarge becomes more curious and searches for larger secrets in Dr. Manette's old jail cell. Lucy and Darny mature and have children. Carton is able to move on and get married. And finally, Mr. Lorry becomes worried of what is to come. To conclude, I have to answer one last question. Is my chapter necessary to the novel? I believe that my chapter is very necessary considering it advances the plot in a major way and how the revolution begins and the people start to fight back against the nobles. It also introduces another major theme, which is fate, and how the revolution is going to happen and nobody can stop it no matter what because the people are going to obtain what they want. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope it wasn't too boring, and I'll see you in class.